going on? Welcome to Coffee and Conversation with Kevin Smith. Sorry a little bit late, but was having technical difficulties, but welcome on in. Come on in, like, share. Definitely excited about tonight's conversation. So tonight's conversation is mental health through the eyes of a veteran. Mental health through the eyes of a veteran. I'm a veteran. My guest, she's a veteran. So I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have. So get your coffee, whatever you drink, get it, pull up, and let's have this conversation. So before I introduce my guest, so the job of the day is caramel and butterscotch latte, and it's from the Human Bean here in Dallas. I'm gonna try to get some actual coffee that other people can try that's not here in Dallas, Texas, but this is a local coffee shop here. I got a caramel and butterscotch latte. It is definitely needed for me. I drink coffee a lot, so this is the Java of the day. So if you're here in Dallas, Texas, go to the Human Being and get a cup of coffee and let them know that Kevin Smith from Coffee and Conversation sent you. All right. So let's get to the conversation. So I want to introduce my guest on this evening. Her name is Shamika McCoy. She is recently retired, and we actually know each other. We were stationed in Minot, North Dakota, as people say, why not, my not? And I'll let her introduce herself. I can introduce her, but I'll let her introduce herself as long as she can. All right.
Oh, well, you were doing an awesome job, Kevin. You didn't have to stop.
Well, I appreciate it, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm Shamika McCoy. I'm currently just recently retired as of 1 February of 2023 after 20 years of service. Couldn't wait to get out, honestly. But now I just farm full time. So me and my husband were both retired out of the Air Force, and we went into farming as we transitioned. So we have 2 kids. My son is graduating from high school this Friday, and our daughter is 13, and we have 2 dogs. So
okay,
that's me.
Okay. All right. So again, welcome. So I'm gonna call you Mika because that's what I'm used to calling you. So
Yeah, that's what I go by.
yeah. So tell me, what did you do when you were active duty in the Air Force?
When I first enlisted, I went into COM, pretty much. It was knowledge ops. And then I retrained into mental health. And so I was a mental health technician and then became internationally certified as an alcohol and drug counselor.
Okay. And so when you did that, like, was that something that you wanted to do, or that was just something that you just said, hey, this is what I'm gonna do?
I I thought it was definitely something that I wanted to do. When they came out, the NCORP for COM, we were overmanned, and so they wanted 100 staff sergeants to to cross train into other career fields that were short manned. So looking at the list, anything that deals with the military, you want to do something. Um, Hold on, let me close my door because my nephew just came in town for his graduation. Um, Sorry about that, y'all. New to this whole thing. Might have to tell them to turn it down. Naya,
Good.
can y'all turn the TV down for me?
You
Just
good?
put the new Spider-Man movie on for my nephew so he could sit down while I did this. But yes, so it was the NCORP program where they want as many people as they can to cross train out of the career field. And so I took a look at the list so I could do something voluntarily before the military forced you into doing something that you don't want to do.
Right.
And you have a lot of career fields out there where people are looking for those cross training opportunities. So I didn't want to get something that was like security forces or maintenance, where I knew me, like that wouldn't fit my personality. So taking a look at the list, I knew that medical would be something that I would enjoy doing. And I like to talk to people. I like to help people. So it narrowed it down to mental health being my number one choice. And that's what I submitted my application for and went
Okay.
into.
Okay. So, um, tell me about, what your experience has been when it comes to, working with veterans. Again, of course, I know you from us working together at the clinic in North Dakota, but what has your experience been in the time that you were actually in the role of that while you were in the military?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
I know. I know. Hey. We got an hour, so we
uh,
can so we can talk and we can
right,
discuss.
right.
So let's go.
That is a definitely loaded question. Um, it's been good and bad. Like there's the beauty in mental health where helping veterans or helping military folks get the treatment in any if it's civilian or wearing a uniform get the help that they need to recover. Those are the stories that I enjoyed the most, helping people overcome the crisis or whatever issue or situation that they were in if they could truly recover. But I think at the end of the day, when you talk about the active duty aspect of mental health, it's a little difficult when you have a fitness for duty to meet. So some people look at mental health as a weakness, and it's really not a weakness. So they always talk about overcoming a stigma, and it's not necessarily a stigma. It's just the viewpoint that people have on mental health and how they want their reputation or their viewpoint to be portrayed in their unit, or how is it that they want to be viewed. So um you can carry mental health very well, or you can carry it as a crutch. And so that's pretty much how when you able to meet the person where they're at, then how can you truly help this person get to where they need to be. But that first, once they walk through the door, that's really the biggest key, is getting them through the door. Because with the deployments, TDYs, PCSs, that does hinder a lot of assignments and locations that people can go to. So going into mental health, um, it's kind of one of those downfalls where they don't want to jeopardize the opportunity to go overseas, or they don't want to jeopardize an opportunity to get a special duty, things of that nature, because the timing is also important. Not the fact that the person went to mental health, but has this person been stable for X amount of time?
Right.
And that's one of the hindrance that mental health had
Right.
in getting the treatment.
So I'll tell you. So I mean, so first episode that the first conversation that I've done with my podcast, I told the world, and you know, because I confided in you with some stuff, but the world knows, I went through my mental health journey, and I kind of told my story and where I'm at now versus where I was in 2015. And when you talk about the whole thing with when it comes to, being ready. So in the Air Force, you had to be ready for a certain period of time to be able to deploy. And I remember that was the reason why I got medically retired, because I was not medically ready. I was not deployable because of my mental health. So how did that affect? So if a person came into you all's clinic and said, "Hey, I got something going on," um, did that necessarily disqualify them, or it was just based upon like how that would affect them if they were downrange for a whole period of time? Like what was how did that look when it came to someone coming in? that had depression issues or anything like that?
And that's a good question, because it's not necessarily a cookie cutter. It is case by case. But there's different things that we look at in regards to the person's environment, their support system, their previous treatment that they've probably gone through, like their history, their, you call it biopsychosocial. So you're looking at their, any like family history that they have. And so taking all those factors into account, then you can kind of determine, how quick this person can recover, or going on this deployment, is this something that is going to be beneficial for that member, that PCS, that TDY? Because sometimes it might be an environmental reason why this person is stressed or depressed, or, whatever is going through with them, that we might want to get them out of this current situation and things could resolve. Now, one thing that I do like about the mental health career field is that we're pretty much anywhere, we're everywhere,
Right.
that there is a clinic, or there's some type of hospital that will be close by, because if you can't go to that actual clinic, then we can outsource it. We can get you off base, treatment as well. So a lot of different factors go into play, but sometimes if you remove that person from that environment, then it might cause more harm. So it's not really like an easy answer to give, because everybody handles things differently. And, for a single parent to come into our clinic, me saying like, oh, that's good for them to go on that deployment, might cause more stress. Or, so you have to take into account what's the bigger picture, what's causing the stress, what's causing the depression, what's causing this crisis at the moment, and see how we can what courses of treatment do we have to offer to get that person back to duty as soon as possible.
Okay. So let me talk about this, because everybody that went to Minot.
I couldn't wait to leave now.
Yeah. So everybody that went to Minot, at some point was like depressed, because there was nothing out there. There was one highway to get in and out. Like, you just knew that one highway. And so when you came, it was cool during the summer if you came during the summer, but if you came during the winter, it just made it more terrible for you. So my thing, and I want us to, just have this conversation as far as, like, when I was going through what I went through, I remember you and your husband, being there for me and being able to help, because, being in a place like Minot, and there's nothing like,
those isolated locations.
Yes, very isolated.
Yeah.
And so tell me, like your own experience or anything like that. Like, how does one, because there's other locations that people go to and they're like, man, like, I don't want to deal with this, or somebody may be watching or will see this podcast, this conversation, and they say, well, I'm stationed here. Like, how do I deal with that? Because I know I was stationed in Alaska, and the same thing in Alaska, just like it is in North Dakota, to where they had to have like a light, and people had to go in the light because it was it was dark, 9 months of the year. So
I still keep a satellite on my desk. Just for, because it's really good for the mood, getting that extra vitamin D, as long as you have the right lighting. But yes, going to those isolated locations, especially for like a first term, individual, someone who's just left home, never been to, like, I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
Come on, Detroit.
Hey, when they sent me to Idaho, North Dakota, I was like, where the hell did they just send me? What is this? Is this some tumbleweed going down the road? Like, oh, the Air Force don't like me. So I'm not a country person, I'm from the city. So there's something to do. There's something on every corner. When you're driving down the street, you see things as you're driving. You're not used to just this open field, this country farm, like type environment. And so that can be a shock. And so when you're not used to thinking outside the box or being that creative or like, well, okay, well, what am I going to do? You kind of isolate yourself and you withdraw and you stay in your dorm room and, you're like, it's bored. And so then, you either just eating or, maybe you're shopping or you find something that is kind of like a negative, um, what I'm kind of saying, like a negative, I didn't lost my train of not lost my train of thought, but I've lost my words or whatever. But um, you kind of get into bad habits, right? And so you have to sort of be creative in that type of environment. So when we go into Minot, I literally cried when Darius got that assignment to Minot. I remember being in my tech school dorm room and was like, what just happened? Because I was cross training, so I was able to get a base of preference. And so I got Buckley, Colorado. And I was like, I want to go to Denver. Like, I prefer to go to Denver. I know it's cold, but out of the two, I want to go to Denver, not Minot. And so I had my command chief, I had everybody at Pope Air Force Base calling to like get us out of it because I was working at the wing. I was trying to use all my connects, like who know who, to get me out of this assignment. And they said it didn't matter if the president called because he was slotted for PRP, we were going to Minot. So, and for us, that was, we're newly married, we're going to Minot. What is it to do at Minot? It's cold.
So how did that affect your mental health going there?
Initially, I think because initially I wouldn't say it kind of affected my mental health in regards to the environment because I was a little excited. I'm starting a new career. I've been in the Air Force already. I'm cross training into mental health. This is my first duty assignment. So I was looking forward to it. But on the flip side, I was a little worried in regards to my marriage, and like my family. We have a son. There might not. What is it to do?
Right.
So me and Darius, we kind of like we sat down because he was going out into the missile field, so he was going to be considered deployed in place. So he's gone 6 months. I consider myself a single parent, so what we tried to do is the second day that he would come back from the field was a date night. And, we incorporated like, game nights, things that we would do as a family, which is like when we got close in regards to me and you, that's when we started going to Botno. We would take Shamar, to Fargo just to go to Chuck E. Cheese. We were going to Bismarck to go to like indoor hotels that had a pool, things of that nature. So it made us more outdoor person because I can tell you right now, coming from Detroit, I would have never skied or tubed or any of that stuff. But Darius was an outdoor person. So I think it allowed the opportunity for our relationships to really merge and us get to know each other and develop as a family. So that did help to strengthen us. And one of the things that I saw a lot in the clinic was either, Minot would make or break a relationship. And a lot of times it broke the relationship because like you said, pretty much 9 months out of the year is cold, or it's dark, so what do people do? They're going to stay in the house. So there was like babies being popped up like left and right come June, July, because 9 months they had been in the house. So what are you doing? They ain't doing number one thing. So you're just baking babies. So our nurse, stayed busy in a hall. But then at the end of the day, once the light came, and people were able to go outside, we saw that a lot of marriages and relationships started to, have issues. And so that's one of the things that the communication was really key. And the military members communicating with their spouse as to what the military was asking for them to do, what was the mission, those things, which we seen that it was a lot of break. The communication was not fluent as it should be, which then causes people to lose their families or their kids. Now they're separated from their kids because they're going through a divorce. They're trying to figure that stuff out. So
Right.
The PRP mission didn't help being there either, because any little thing like that, if they had a new baby or they were going through some type of separation, was considered PDI, potentially disqualifying. Yeah. So little things, and so of course the person doesn't want to bring that up to anyone, because now they're down for X amount of time until they can be up, and so then so that takes a toll on their military career, just based off of the little things that they're trying to handle at home. So
so Trevion says, hey, did the installation leadership recognize this issue of how that affected the family because of, geographically, isolated in an area that most people, never heard of or never been to or never experienced? Like, did the leadership know, and how did they deal with it?
Excellent question. So the leadership was aware. I would say, okay, let me make sure I phrase it correctly, because they are aware of the issue now as current. I don't know if they are, as fluent, as things change, but they do have it's been a while, but they have surveys. So they do like these assessment surveys, climate assessment surveys. Yeah. So they do the climate surveys. And depending on like how people respond to those surveys, they are introduced to the issues that are going on in their units or on the base. And so then what they do is they take those climate surveys and they get a team of people. So you got mental health, you got chapel, you got the I'm gonna say MWR just so that I can be like across the board.
Yeah.
But you got MWR, you got services. So all these people come together and they work on how can we address these issues, and then they put those actions into play. But the reason why I started off and saying that it wasn't as current, because this survey could have been 18 months ago, right? And so then new issues addressed. And so then we just, you have this never-ending cycle of trying to be retroactive instead of being proactive. And so I think now the military is doing a decent job on trying to be more proactive than proactive versus retroactive. Right. Okay. That's really not the word that I was looking for.
Yeah, I get you. I get what you're saying though.
Yeah, because what they're doing now is trying to put mental health people embedded into the units, and I think that is a good tool. And so what we're trying to eliminate is people coming to the mental health clinic and us being there for them when it's live. So I'd rather deal with it live in action versus you calling a clinic and having to wait 30 days to get an appointment, to now have to think back to what brought you into the clinic, and then we address those issues when they're probably not as current and you've already dealt with the issue.
So I want to. So there is this. I don't want to say myth, but there's this thing out there that I always hear. If you was in the military, you definitely have PTSD. It's something that's in the military. But I've seen to where people that never been in the military have PTSD. So it's not a military thing. I think most people associate PTSD with the military and associate a lot of mental health illnesses with the military. But the thing is, I guess, to answer this, what did you see across the board when it came to dealing with, PTSD and all of that? Because I know being in Minot and being in places like that, that can affect you, especially if you were deployed, because I remember I deployed while I was there. And then you go to a place like Saudi Arabia, and then you having fun. You out there, you
Right.
kicking it.
I remember Darius was like, "Can I send him some swim trunks?" What? I am. What are you doing on your deployment? I'm at the house with the kids. You got to come back.
So, so now you're like, okay, so and that's another thing. So when we talk about the family and we look at how that affected the family, the thing is y'all were dual military. So both of you all understood because both of y'all deployed. But if you got a mom, say if you were just a civilian mom, all right, stay at home, and you got your two kids, and Darius is off deployed and he's in Saudi Arabia enjoying a good life. He's supposed to be on the deployment, but Air Force, our deployments are our deployments.
They hit and miss. Yeah.
Yeah. So, even though people hate on our deployments, but like I tell everybody, hey, military was a volunteer. So you volunteer for whatever service you went into. Don't hate the game, hate the branch that you joined. So that's all I gotta say about that. But at the end of the day, like how did that affect, or how do you think that would affect somebody? You telling them, oh well, I'm enjoying, I'm swimming, and you over here in -60 degree weather, and you struggling with two kids or three kids or whatever. Like, how does that affect not only the spouse, the kids, but how does it affect the person that's over deployed are supposed to be doing what they're doing? Like, how does that affect the overall family?
You are full of loaded questions, aren't
I
you?
know.
Right.
I know.
So, I think I will probably have to take a personal approach on this one. I mean, I too, I also have PTSD. But like you said, somebody said, "See, not swimming during deployment, huh?" um, but yeah, I too also have PTSD, and like you said, it doesn't have to be just combat related PTSD. I have both, combat related and non-combat PTSD. But as a dual military couple, it's tough. It's definitely tough, and especially for I always had considered myself as a single parent because Darius held very high, I thought, high positions, going through the military. But for us, it required us to look at which career do we really like, who's competing, at this point. Um, and so I decided that my career would take a, a seat, a step back. Like, so I wasn't the one trying to, get all the accolades or, doing all that military hoorah stuff. I decided to be the spouse, the wife, the mother. I know I wore the uniform, but I knew why I wore the uniform. And I think that's really what helped us in our relationship. I did it for my family. I did it for my husband to be very successful. Those military spouses, like, I commend them, to really support and uplift their spouse so that they can be successful in their career. It takes a lot. And so for my husband to be, an MTI, and for me to run a inpatient unit, that was definitely tough. You can't run a 24-hour mental health ward and your husband is an MTI at Lackland and you're at SAMC. Like, we both have very demanding careers, and so that required us to also, lean on our family. So my mom came in, which, that's why my mom is a veteran. She also suffers from mental health difficulties as well. But she, at the drop of a dime, when I said I needed her, she would come there. And I think I understood it a lot more working in the mental health career field, that our family had to have that stability, because without that stability, then, I'm gonna be on the other side of my clinic. I don't want to be in FAP, like I'm not trying to have FAP in my business. So, I take that in consideration, like, okay, well, who all gonna get involved? What is it that we need to do? And so I really just had to take a step back. I couldn't compete the way that Darius was competing. And I knew that, although I wanted to, and I did early on in our career, in my career, I just decided that I needed to take a step back. And if the kids needed anything, if they had a doctor's appointment or was sick, or scratched something and needed to be picked up from school because they wasn't feeling well, hey, guess what? I'm there for my kids. I'm gonna be there for the military, but like they always say, take care of your people and the people will take care of the mission. And that's exactly what I did. I took care of the people who was underneath me and there for me. And when I needed something, they had my back. It wasn't like I would ask them to do something that I wouldn't do. I'm not going to ask you to keep, do these tasks and I wouldn't do them or anything like that. So I think that definitely helped. So for Darius to be, deployed or, having to wake up at 4:00 in the morning during 0 week, to go push those flights, work late hours, come home, flop right into bed to wake back up and, the next morning, I knew that that's what I needed to, I had to do so that my husband could be successful and get those strats and, be the number 2 of, of however many, and it paid off. Our family didn't hinder anything, and neither did his career or my career or anything like that. But it takes a strong conversation. That's not easy, to ask another person to take the back seat, of their career. And a lot of times, it's kind of like in the background, right? Because these PCSs, you got to think the other spouse, they have to pick up their job. They have to look and see, is their job, transferable? Are they going to be able to get the same, amount of pay? But for the military, they just look at it. Oh, this is just one person that we have to move to a different location. They don't look at the bigger picture as to all the different environments that are the key factors that go on in that person's life when the spouse is also working. Sometimes, hey, they have better jobs than the person in the military.
Right.
I've seen people who have legal, doctors, so it is tough, but those are the conversations. Those are the tough conversations that you sit down at the family table and you include your family on if you're going to accept that assignment or not. And so that's when you have to turn down that assignment if it doesn't work best for your family, or you take it.
Okay. So one of the questions, did that pose an issue mentally, thinking I am a single parent, although you were married, or take a step back in your career?
Did it pose a what? Can you repeat that?
Did it pose an issue mentally, thinking that I'm a single parent, although you were married, or take a step back in your career?
It did, and that's why I said I had to come to peace. So mentally, I had to be at peace with the decision that we were making as a family. So that's how I was able to overcome, me taking that back seat. Because you got to know why you're doing it. Right. And I knew why I chose to do that, and I was at peace with it. Okay. So I was happy. Well, I became happy. Hold on, let me. So, a lot of these conversations wasn't just as easy as me and Kev having this conversation. Darius got the brunt of it. I can tell you that, but definitely.
Okay, so I want to kind of switch to because one of the things that we all know, and I think is a campaign that's always going on, is the suicidal rate within the military, because things are hard. I mean, I faced it. I told everybody about my story and about how I was at Minot and they sent me away for 45 days. But the thing is, like, that suicide is something that people don't really want to talk about because
No, but you know what I loved about our relationship, and I think that's kind of the trouble that I got into being in mental health because whenever someone needed help, I always told you, hey, come in, not ask for me, come to my office. If you need something, I'm here. And then it was more so like, oh, you're doing but that, they want you to go buy the book or buy the AFI or buy this and that. And I'm like, look, I'm gonna meet the person where they're at. And if they need me here, there, if text message, if you need to call me, then I'll be there for you. Because at the end of the day, there's no cookie cutter saying that you can only call the clinic to speak with that person. But if I'm with someone else and you need me, and how am I to tell you that I'm gonna be here for you if I can't be here for you when you truly do need me at that moment? But
right.
that was kind of like my personal struggle with being a mental health person.
Yeah, I want to just pause because you said AFI, and a lot of people don't know what AFI is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is Air Force instruction for people who do not know what it is. It is Air Force instruction.
Because, and they have a lot more than just the AFIs now. So now that they have the Genesis, and now you got DHA, and so there's a whole lot more to what dictates how you handle or interact with clients nowadays. So
right. So your background was alcohol and drugs. You dealt with both. Yeah. So how did that play a part when it came to the military and veterans, like dealing with that and seeing that? Like, did you see a lot of that? Like, how did that?
Oh, I mean, definitely. When I first came in, I was assigned to OSS. So you got the pilots and everything, and of course, what we got in the break area, we got a bar. So alcohol is an acceptable drug, like it's natural. But then I can tell you this: I was so glad I was not mental health when I went to Korea, because those buses, and by the time I was able to sit on the opposite end, I understood where my clients were coming from.
Right.
But in actuality, like it's hard. It is a struggle because a lot of times when people come through that door, the alcohol and drug program is a commander program. So, people are like, well, I don't need to be here. I don't have an issue. And, anytime that there is an alcohol related incident, even when you're drinking responsibly, if you stump your toe and you go to medical or you go to the ER or you have any type of issue that requires, if you have an injury that you had alcohol in your system, it's considered an alcohol related incident. And then now you have to go to the ADAP program or the substance. I think the behavioral health clinic. I was trying to think of like what Army and the Marines call it, or the Navy, but that could take a toll on a person's career depending on where they're at. Are they up for a PCS? Are they going to be deploying soon? Because they look at it as if you only receive education, then chances are you'll still be medically cleared as long as you completed all the requirements for that education piece. But anything other than that, chances are you have to wait a year, from the last, that last treatment. So right. It can hinder a person continuing on into wherever, like the PCS or the deployment. I know I keep being redundant in regards to where they're going next.
Okay. So going back to when I was talking about suicide, because
we were talking.
Yeah. So it's one of those things of like, that's something that's not talked about. If I know we do the push-up, the 22 push-ups for all of that. But the thing is, why is it that people like veterans don't want to talk? Like, because my thing is, I knew why I didn't want to tell nobody. Like you said earlier, if you tell somebody that you're suicidal, that's going to stop everything, because now they're going to probably put you on suicidal watch. They're going to take you away from certain things. So what your so your career, is at a standstill. But how does that, basically you not saying anything, how does that affect you? How does it affect your job, your career, and then your family? Because you're basically not trying to get the help that you need
Yeah.
based upon your career, and knowing that if I go and I tell my commander, if I tell my supervisor, hey, I I'm
You know
suicidal.
what? It when I didn't give a damn, when I didn't give a damn, it felt that much easier to talk about it
Mm,
because I went to mental health, and when I had my medical appointments, I sent a calendar invite to my supervisor. I'm going to my mental health appointment. And I put it on there twice a week or whatever. But once I really put myself first, because when you look at the grand scheme of things in the military, I just retired 1 February. You think they called me? No. So they gonna continue to run with or without you. And once you know where you stand at and where you're trying to go, you gotta take care of yourself. And I knew I had to take care of myself more so just so that I could also take care of the people who were coming into my office. And so at that point, hey, either you'll be able to relate more to me because I'm also going through some of the same things that you're going through. I'm dealing with the same things. I know the book a little bit better. Okay, yes, I can open up this DSM-4. I can go through the criteria. I can tell you, like, based on what you're exhibiting and, how you're experiencing, how you're handling these, this is not the right thing. Now, did I do the same thing for myself? Probably not. But yeah, it took a toll on my family as well. I was snapping at my kids. I
mm.
came home, I was drinking more. I'm withdrawing from my husband. I'm not communicating as best as I should, all because I am, depressed. I'm dealing with my own PTSD, and until I got the help that I needed, I'm not gonna say like I'm not 100% better, because I still have those moments where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to knock it, I'm trying to get out of it. I want to utilize the tools and the skills that I have, and I have to do that for myself. But it it allowed for my kids and my husband to understand what I was going through, or even in those moments where I'm like, I just need a time to myself, I just need a moment to myself, or work. And I started telling them no. Or half of the time I was telling them yes, but I was really in my mind like,
No.
yeah, 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 I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yes, I got you. And then they understood. They started to understand like, oh, Sergeant McCoy just be saying yeah, but hey, if the airmen or the people under me didn't ask me leadership and this, that, and the third, hey, I'm not about to sit here and stress. I'm not working super late. I'm not going above and beyond. I'm not doing all this extra stuff because it's only going to take a toll on me, and I'm going to go further and further down this spiral. And I can't do that because I'm going to be no use or no good to anybody else. So it, I know I probably didn't answer your question in
No,
regards to
you
not
did.
talking about it, but I think you have to come to that point, that moment, to say like when you're ready. um because if it's outside factors that's hindering you to talk about it, then you have to eliminate those outside factors. But if it's personally inside, you have to come to terms with yourself and know when it's time to actually get that help.
Okay. So it's so much to unpack, and I think that the biggest thing about it is when when you're a veteran or when you active duty, and you're and say, hey, I got this going on, or my wife just found out she got breast cancer, and now I'm about to deploy,
Yeah.
and now that puts a mental strain on you. And so it's so much, when you look at it, people say, oh, well, and I'm just gonna say this, people always say, hey, the Air Force, when they deploy, we talked about Saudi Arabia, but I mean, I deployed to Afghanistan. I deployed, and that was my first deployment. But how, like, when it comes to that, like, how, if anyone's going through that, if everyone has, an illness that they're going through, or someone has cancer, and now it's affecting the member, how does that member, try to cope with that and still be able to do the mission? Because the only thing, I wouldn't say it like that, but most people, the mission has to get done. And so at the end of the day, as a veteran, that takes a toll, because now you have all this weight on you. So now you're like, okay, how do I continue to still do my job and don't fail and don't let anything sink? Because if I start failing in my job, that causes, I can get written up, and that causes me to end up even getting kicked out because I'm not doing my job properly. So you have so much
But
weight on you.
you're not going to be able to do your job.
Right, right.
And if, especially if it's a newly diagnosis, I wouldn't expect that member to, to deploy if I was, leadership or something of that nature. Because their family, I would want them to get their family, situated. And they have the EFMP program to where, you know, is there a location that is better suited? So obviously, with us being at Minot, Trinity, was it Trinity?
Yep, it was
Trinity
true.
Hospital probably didn't have a lot,
Right. So what is
Um,
EFMP? Because
oh, oh, I'm a bad guest. I
yes,
am so bad. The Exceptional Family Member
program.
Program,
Yep.
and so if you have any family members that have disabilities or conditions that require them to be to receive specialty care at least 3 times a year. That's a minimum. I'm not an EFMP guru, but I know that if there's specialty care that is required for your family member, then they'll make sure that you're in a location that they can receive those services. And so you said, like, the person's um, just got diagnosed with cancer. I would expect us to get them to a location to where their family member can get the treatment that they need, because once again, as in when we talked about in Minot, we have a potentially disqualifying information to where I can't have this person around um, this high, attention to detail, type task, and they're not going to be focused on it. So we're going to get them, their family situated, and then we'll get the member back to the mission as soon as possible. But
So Sean Sullivan says, "Hi, I have autism, and I was wondering if you know of any veteran family members that have disabilities, and if so, could we connect? I don't know if you know anything like that, Mika.
for veterans,
Yeah.
I'm a newly veteran, so I got to get into this whole veteran community. I don't know, but I do know that there were a few active duty members who had autistic kids or family members as well. So I'll have to dig deeper into your question to get you the information that you just asked, and I'd love to do that
Yeah, so
as
so
well.
Sean, we'll definitely get that information, and once we get it, we'll definitely, I'll definitely get it passed to you, so you can definitely look it up. So I appreciate the question. Definitely praying for you, sir. So when it comes to, just like that transition, because you just talked about it, the transition, and now you're thinking, because I'm telling you, the transition being in my night. Okay, I'm telling myself I'm about to transition out of the military. Only thing I've known, I was in the military all of my 20s, and and I got out at 34.
So I
And
came in at 18 and I did 20 years. So all I
yeah,
knew is
yeah. So it's like how does that affect? How would that affect a veteran, um, uh, in their mental health? Because now it's
well,
like
you got to start early on.
right.
You do, and I think for our transition, and this is, I don't want to sound like touche or anything like that, but we did financial peace years ago. So we knew financially what we could handle. Okay, um, that was another veteran. That was my husband who just chimed in or gave a comment. But we knew like financially what we could handle, what we needed, and the good thing about when they do have these transition programs, the Airman and Family Readiness, they have courses that you can take. But I feel like that year transitioning, like before you transition out, to me is not enough. I'm a little, well, I ain't gonna say I'm a little OCD. I am OCD. I'm a OCD, ADHD, all that stuff. So we put our affairs in order like way before, so that the transition was a little bit smoother. But when I was at 12 years in the military, um, I wanted to hang it up. I wanted to walk away. I couldn't do it no more. I was done. I was tired of being stressed going into work, sitting in the parking lot, dreading to go in, and all that. It wasn't worth it. So I just wanted to walk away with my 12 years and go see what life could offer. But I decided to, I got my master's, and my husband said, like, as long as you stay in and get your retirement, you don't have to do anything else. And so, my eyes got big. I was like, okay, cool. What do I need to do? So the transition was a little bit easier for me because I knew at 12 years that came, January 31st of 2023, I was definitely going to be making sure I was not putting on that uniform no more. Mm. So, and I know that's not always the case because you have certain situations that can change that. I also went through an MEB process, trying to, get to 20. So there was a lot of things that could have interrupted my final transition that I wanted to, and I could have been transitioning a lot sooner. So, once again, having those plans or having those things in order early on can help it, even if you get derailed from your plan, to make sure that you have a good nest, a good net,
right,
versus net.
Hey, Mr. Sullivan, I'll hit you up. I don't want your contact information to be out there for everyone to see, but I will definitely hit you up, and I'll get that privately, and make sure that we get the information to you. So going back to what you said, Mika, as far as the transition and all of that, but I know that for most people, what would you say to I know you said get your affairs in order.
Yeah, that was just I was taking a personal effect. So
yeah. So but like you talked earlier, you said take care of yourself. So that's part of taking care of yourself is making sure that you have what you need. But sometimes it's not easy because sometimes you at the drop of a because again, I was not expecting to be medically retired. So when that comes up, after doing 15 years and say, hey, you're being medically, so now that starts this whirlwind, especially if your
goal,
yes, if so, my goal was 20,
yeah,
but I got stopped at 15,
yeah,
and so that messes with you because now it's like, how do I set myself up for future? Because now it's an automatic thing, and now it's like, okay, now you got to get out. And so it's like, okay, where do I go? What do I do? And then going through TAPS, that's just, yeah.
I'm not gonna say CBTs because I was but that's just like, watching PowerPoints. Yeah,
Right.
and TAPS is good. They have really good information, and like I said, they have the resources there. But it's late. I feel like it's late, at that point. But you really do. You try to set the person up for success as best as possible, right? And anything that dramatic and change is going to cause stress because that had nothing to do with your vision board. Like, you could try to write down your goals. This is what you want to accomplish in a year. This is what you want to do, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. And then wham, like bam, hey, yeah, cancel Christmas. Like, come on now. Like, what you expect me to do? So that is like a definitely spiral of effects. And so now you're looking at, housing, you're looking at, where are you going to settle, you're looking at finances, you're looking at, because I mean, I don't have to guess if I'm gonna get paid on the 1st and the 15th. Like, I know I'm getting paid, regardless. And so that's all that stuff is abruptly coming to an end. And so yeah, it's not easy. It, it is not easy. And even when you talked about those life-changing diagnoses, like if somebody has cancer, like, because you got to think about health insurance, you have to think about dental insurance, you have to think about so many things that was already like taken care of for you, without thinking about it. And so even for me transitioning, right, I don't even have my dental taken care of because I'm like, what number do I call? Who do I reach out to? Like it for me, it requires me to get into a routine. So I have to be in the mode to want to be on the phone with somebody for 15, 20 minutes just to get something that I thought should be taken care of in the first, 30 seconds. Because it's not that easy. You don't know what questions to ask. You don't know what verbiage to use. They're like, well, how can I help you with your issue? And you're like, oh, well, I think this is what I'm looking for. And then next thing you know, 30 minutes later, you get to the person that you really needed to get in contact with because you didn't know how to articulate what issue or what question you really did have. So, all that transition,
Yeah.
that
It's,
is a whole podcast session in
it
itself.
is.
Like
It
I know
is.
I threw out a bunch of different like talking points because um, moving logistically, that trying to find a place, the rent, the inflation, like if you're trying to get out, now or before, housing, interest rates are like crazy. You
Crazy.
do
Yeah.
you sell your home, you got to buy a new home. Do you stay here at this, location that you just, separated from? There's a lot of different factors. And for sometimes, the kids kind of make it a little bit easier. If I'm getting out right now, maybe I wait till they get out of school, like
Right.
it's
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot
sorry, I just put a
that.
lot on
Oh
your
no,
plate.
oh no, it's fine. So it's a lot that goes into talking about transitioning and all that. But I know we're almost out of time. But the biggest thing for me when it comes to this conversation, mental health through the eyes of a veteran is that stigma that you first talked about, and making sure that we talk, that we speak up. One of the things that I remember when I had when I had a suicidal ideation was I called someone. I talked to an NCO, and then and I don't know how it is in the other branches, but in the Air Force, if you tell an NCO that thinking about killing yourself, it's their job. It's everybody's job to report. But I told an NCO. So an NCO, I told him in confidence, but he said, bro, I have to tell, I have to report this because I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't report. And so the thing is, I just want you to, as we end this conversation, just talk about the whole thing about speaking up, and being able as veterans, active duty and transition to veterans, is that never, um, you never go away from that. And so even as a veteran trying to come out into the world, and you're not getting paid like you said on the 1st and 15th, but now you're having to figure out, do I get a job, housing, all of that, like how that can affect your mental health in so many ways, to where you go to drug use, you go to alcohol use, you do all these things, because it affects your mental health. Like how and what would you say to people, when it comes to all of that, with the transition from active duty to being just a veteran? Like how does one get over that hump? Because it's hard for some people, especially if you don't have the assistance that you once had, or you don't have the resources, because sometimes the resources are not given to you. So what would you say to be able to help people, get to that point to where it's not stressing them and it's not affecting their mental health?
There's a commercial out there that I always be laughing at, when they talk about like it was easy as 1, 2, 3. But take it one day at a time, one task at a time, one moment at a time. You can't take. I won't tell anybody what they can't do, but try not to take it all on at once. If you're able to write it down, these are the things that you need to accomplish. If it's housing, if it's, securing a job, going through some interviews, getting all the things that you need, your affairs in order, write them down, check them off, but don't take them all at once, because that's when we kind of spiral, um, down into this effect where you're not accomplishing what you need to, and it takes a toll on you mentally. Um, it's probably not like the rocket science answer, but that's really what it is. Breathe, relax, and look at it. Look at everything that you have to take care of, and then press forward.
Okay.
I don't know if hopefully that
No,
was.
no, no. Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's so much, like, I mean, and that's why I'm doing this, because there's so much to unpack.
I'm not able to multitask, and I know a lot of people say, "Well, I can multitask. I can do this, and do that." I can't multitask. If I try to multitask, I'm disoriented. I'm dysfunctional, and then I lose track of what I was doing, and then this one is halfway done, and then I start this one, and then I want to go back to the other one. So that's why I just suggest that you take it, one thing at a time, one
Yeah.
day at a time, because it just makes things a lot easier, and you feel more successful and accomplished, when you're able to knock things off and check it off your list.
Okay. Well, Miss Shamika McCoy, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. This conversation, these conversations that we're having about mental health is definitely needed. I wanted to do a conversation about veterans. I would definitely love to have you back at the end of the season
I
on our
know. I
panel.
felt like you had loaded questions for me that I hope the audience got the answers that they needed, but they
Yeah,
were so loaded, Mr. Kevin.
yeah, I know, I
Uh,
know. I'm try to make sure that they're not loaded, but you know, it's this is such a big and important topic for me, and so I have so much, and I want to talk about so much. So
yeah, and
I
it's a much needed. All the questions that you had were much needed conversations to have. It's just each question required an hour.
yeah.
So for
Well,
me, I was like,
hey,
well, how can
hey.
I narrow it down?
Right,
And
right. Yeah, yeah. So there's more conversations to be had, but I definitely appreciate you coming on, and taking some time out, to be, on Coffee Conversation, and just talk about mental health through the eyes of a veteran. So I appreciate you. Before we go, I do want to let y'all know, next week, the conversation next week, please have the family, have your kids, Next week, I'm going to have teens come on, and we're going to talk about mental health through the eyes of teens, through our children who have dealt with mental health, whether it's bullying and all of that. So come back next week, same time at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I can't wait to have that conversation. We're going to actually talk to teens that have faced mental health issues and what do they do and how do they deal with them. So I'm excited. Again, I'm touching on every facet of mental health. So join us next week. So as we are leaving, again, appreciate Miss Shamika McCoy, my special guest for this evening. So whether it's morning, afternoon, or late at night, a little cup of joe and conversation can get you right. This is Kevin Smith from Coffee and Conversation. Have a good night.